Hello and welcome to another episode of Battle Ready. Where today, just this last week, the Faction Focuses, Foci, Faction Foci,
Sounds 40K.
have completed.
Yeah.
So they have given us an overview of every single faction, 25 factions if you split Iron Jaws and Cruel Boys.
Which the game does.
Well, they said that they're probably going to get the same battle tome, or at least the same index when the index comes out.
Again!
Yeah. But for now, they were separated out in their faction focus, and we wanted to talk about what the game looks like overall. Now, a couple of caveats. We don't know the full rules.
No.
Right? So we don't know what might be in the core rules that makes things better or worse.
Some people do.
Some people have, we don't have the advanced copies.
No, we're not.
But some people do.
We're not that fancy.
We don't know all of the different battle formations. We haven't seen all of the war scrolls. So this is preliminary opinion, right? Yeah. And so we're keeping an open mind. We definitely want to see the full thing before we make any final judgments. But with that caveat out there, Drake, what do you think of the faction focuses as a whole?
Seems the game has been dialed down a little.
Yeah, I think that's super true. I think that, we saw a lot of war scrolls and a couple of the big mega bosses like Nagash or Kragnos.
They're still awesome.
They still have several different abilities that apply to them.
Mm-hmm.
But when you get down to the regular troops, they have one ability. And on the one hand, that's not bad. I mean, it loses a lot of flavor.
Mm-hmm.
It's these guys are, there's only one thing here.
Yeah.
And that is sad.
That is quite sad.
But if I'm being honest, for us as casual players,
very nice and casual.
How many games have we played where we're like, oh, I forgot this guy has this ability?
All of them.
All of them. 100% of games.
Which is over 100 games.
Oh, yeah, we've logged. We're in the 180s, I feel like. And I might have skipped some. I might have forgot some.
That makes me feel wizened.
Wizened? But
what is the point when you've played enough games that you can be considered a veteran?
Oh, you're past that. You're past that. Now you're not at the tournament level, right, where people have played the same army over and over and over again.
That has never
getting
happened.
Reps of the army so that you can get your list dialed in perfect.
I might want that for my Iron Jaws.
Yeah, and maybe at some point you do that, right?
In 4th edition.
So that's sort of a different level of play. But as for whether you can be considered a veteran, if somebody says, "Oh, do you know how to play Warhammer?"
That's at 50 games.
Oh, less than that, I think. I think probably 3 or 4 games in, you could say, "Oh yeah, I know how to play," and then probably right around 20 or 30 games in, you basically know it. Are you still going to make mistakes?
Oh yes,
yeah, for sure.
You still do.
But what we were saying is, every game that we've ever played, we've forgotten some ability because even your basic troops have 3 or 4 abilities on their war scrolls, right? So if you take those out and you streamline it, I think it's going to be much easier to remember all of your abilities.
Yeah.
Right? It's going to be, since you have 10 different units, instead of remembering, 40 or 50 different abilities spread between the 10 of them, you're going to be remembering
11 or 12.
14, 15, something like that. Right?
Because heroes have a couple of them.
Yeah, because the heroes will have 1 or 2. If you bring a big centerpiece, it might have 4, right?
The Gash has a couple.
Yeah. So you'll have, somewhere around that neighborhood probably. And I feel like that's going to make this way rarer.
Yeah.
Oh, shoot, I forgot. Can we go back? Yeah, that's going to be way rarer. So I think that is, I don't know if it's exactly good, but it is a silver lining, right? I think it's a silver lining to what is a loss of flavor. I mean, it is. It's going to be a little bit more muted, the game, which
is sad.
Is a little bit sad, especially because, I really like the more narrative. I like the big events on the tabletop, and having lots of abilities lots of times helps with that. And you're like, oh, my guys can do this. Oh, but your guys shut it down because they using their chaos power. It's more evocative.
Then we could just play another 3,000 point game.
Oh yeah, we'll figure it out. Yeah. But I think the silver lining is you're going to forget abilities a lot less. And I think you'll feel more in control. Even as a casual player like we are, I think you'll feel more in control because there's going to be a lot fewer surprises and there's going to be a lot fewer times where you had this combo or this strategy in your mind.
Yeah.
And then you forget about it when it comes to the table because you're managing 3 other combos you had in mind, right? So I think that's good. What else do you think about the faction focuses?
It seems like some factions are decidedly weaker than others.
Yeah, so I think first, before we go into individual factions, as a whole, what do you think of the power levels of everything?
They seem similar. Some might be a little higher than others, some a little lower.
Yeah, with some exceptions, which we'll talk about.
Yep.
I think that they did a pretty good job of putting everybody, their battle traits seem to be evenish, right?
Yeah.
Can't make any decisions just yet. We haven't read everything. But even the ones that have smaller battle traits or weaker battle traits, you see their war scrolls like, oh, those guys, they have a little bit more rend, or oh, they're hitting harder. And then the guys that have stronger battle traits, you look at them and you're like, oh, well, they have lower wounds. Oh, they're not going to be as strong. So you look at it and you think, oh, okay, maybe these will balance out. Maybe this is going to go on here. So I think as a whole, I'm pretty intrigued, pretty excited for the indices. Pretty excited for them because I think we're going to get a relatively well-balanced thing.
Yeah.
And they come out with those data slates, that's 40K. They come out with the battle scrolls and all this stuff.
Oh, the 40K.
And we're going to get battle tomes pretty soon for at least several of the factions anyway. So I think even if there is some kind of big imbalance, it'll probably be corrected pretty quickly.
It'll sort itself out.
Yeah. So I've got a lot of faith that this is a good start to 4th edition. That said, although overall things look great, a couple of winners and losers. Drake, what are your thoughts? You want to pick a good one or a bad one?
Bad one.
All right, what do you want to talk about?
My dumb fun ogres.
Ogres. Oh,
my dumb fun ogres.
Ogres got kicked in the teeth. So, yeah, so I just think that, it was tough. It's tough for ogres. So they lost their ogre charge. They have a very small one now. And then they only have one other battle trait, if I recall correctly. And it's once per game, every unit gets to roll, and on a D3, 2 up, you do that many mortal wounds. Well, that's once per game, and a third of them are going to fail.
That's sad.
That's pretty sad. It's like, your battle traits aren't really doing that much for you. You really have to rely on your war scrolls. Now, could there be war scrolls or spells or prayers that buff all that stuff? Sure. But if you just look at it in a vacuum, has me a little worried. Same for Gloomspite Gits.
They're the same thing.
They have basically the exact same battle trait.
Although maybe we shouldn't be worried because they are doing great in 3rd edition.
Well, yeah, but that's what I'm saying. I think their war scrolls are going to have to make up for the fact that they have bad battle traits. Yeah,
so the war scrolls are going to be better.
Maybe. I mean, we saw some. I thought the Squig Herd was pretty good.
No, wait, no. Now we can keep. No, now Gloomspite Gits is good. We don't.
So, what about good ones? So, I think there are 2 that stand out to my mind as being pretty good, and that is Stormcast and Slaves to Darkness. Stormcast have a bunch of abilities. They've got the Deep Strike.
Yep.
They've got
40K.
They've got the Finest Hour. Every unit once per game can do Finest Hour.
Which is super good.
So good. And they've got a command point to bring units back.
Which is the best.
So good again. Man, the Stormcast are elite and they're strong. And that feels very thematic about how reinforcements lightning onto the battlefield. I mean, all of that seems really good. I really like it.
And we've also seen several instances where Stormcast do these heroic things at the last possible moment.
So you sacrifice this unit and then you get a replacement. That's very cool. And Slaves to Darkness, similarly, Eye of the Gods, although it's truncated, it's smaller, but you still have Eye of the Gods.
You can't turn into a demon prince.
And you can't turn into a spawn.
Aww.
So again, lose a loss of flavor, but you still have Eye of the Gods, and you still have the marks to customize your units how you want.
Yeah.
Although the Nurgle one is super good.
How good?
And the rest are
what is it?
The Decorum one's okay, and then the other 2 are sort of dumb.
What's the Nurgle one?
-1 to be wounded, I think. It's a good buff. It's a good buff.
The Nurgle mark has always been the one you take on like your Chaos Warriors.
Well, yeah, because the survivability is so good. It means I'm going to survive more, which means I'm going to have more hits, which means my unit actually becomes more effective, right? And the Corn one's okay too. Bonus attacks on the charge. You have to charge, right? And so there's some
Yeah.
counterplay there, but you put it on your knights or something like that has a lot of movement and can get in.
Stupid knights with their new 4 wounds.
And then Slaanesh is +1 to run and charge. It's fine. It's fine.
Would go well with the corn one.
Yeah, if you could pick 2.
I wonder if that's going to be a
Mark.
I am Slorn.
Even though the rat is a chaos god now, no rat mark.
I know he always was a chaos god, just never really accepted as one. Now he's up there with the rest of them.
Well, he was always a chaos god, and there are other chaos gods, like the chaos dwarves worship Hashut, who is a chaos god, but he's not one of the big four. Yeah,
not the big
now
five.
the big 5. So the chaos knight, the great horned rat.
I guess maybe
has ascended.
I wonder if that's gonna be a new model, like one that is rat marked, and it's like a mark of shame upon
a mark of ruin.
No, they like those marks.
So the only other one that I think is very problematic, and I'm not the first. This is not a unique take. Other people have talked about it. Is the Slaanesh one, because the Slaanesh one buffs your opponent. It's a battle trait that's good for your opponent,
which shouldn't be a thing.
Because the idea is you get to buff the unit, and they get run and charge and run and shoot, and they get crit 2 hits.
Yeah,
which is good. That's not bad, and you can do up to 3 of them. That's good. But every unit you pick, you give your opponent a 6 that every time they roll a die, except for hit rolls, they can
except for hit rolls.
Yeah, because otherwise it would trigger all the crits.
Oh, yeah.
Every time they roll a die, they can just say, "Oh, I missed this wound. Okay, put that in."
It's basically like a free command reroll of a 6.
Yeah,
40k.
Yeah, it's really, really good. And if you're fighting with a big monster, or you're doing those massive jaws, and I missed the wound roll. Shoot, 6s.
Now it does 5 damage.
Or you got that charge. You have to have 2 for a charge, but
damage would
you get a 12-inch charge.
Yeah, damage. Like if
I don't know if you can use it for damage.
Oh no.
Yeah, you might not be able to use it for damage. I'd have to look. But that's really, really good. And it feels like since you have to pick at the start of the battle round, and you don't know if that unit's going to get shot to death and become ineffective before you make it euphoric, or you don't know what's going to happen. You pick it and then hope, but they get to roll and then decide to use it. It would be one thing if it was, they did it in advance, although that would still be bad. But the fact that they get to roll and then, use it means you're giving them extra successes that they would have failed, and you give them the successes. Yeah. And the fact that they can choose which successes those go on, right? If it's something that's going to do 1 damage, and they're like, I'm not going to use my 6. But then your monster comes out with like 3 or 4 damage. You're like, it's 6 time. And you're getting that. And Slaanesh is not a heavily armored army, typically.
Oh,
right?
No, yeah. They have like little loincloths.
So you are getting smashed. So I just feel like the battle trait is going to be so hard to use because it is so helpful for your opponent.
I feel like also they might just use it to block an attack from a euphoric.
Oh yeah, so they could use it on defense rolls. So you make your best unit euphoric and like, Sigvald or whoever's going to come in and just do a crazy amount of damage. And then they roll, and those 2 that are misses, those are actually saves. These are my 6s.
Yep, and then if you charge something that like a weakened Gordrak that was going to die, when you charged him, now he just comes in and murders. Although I'm sad because he lost 2 axe attacks.
Yeah, he'll be fine.
Yeah, he'll be fine.
So I have now, again, we haven't seen all the war scrolls. Maybe there are war scrolls that make things euphoric or that play off of that. So it's like, if you make something euphoric, you get this other thing. And so it's like, okay, now that I'm getting so much more, it's worth giving my opponent a 6. So maybe there are things like that, or artifacts or spells, or maybe there is. But just looking at the battle traits by themselves, rough.
Yeah.
I mean, I would be very tempted to play Slaanesh with just war scrolls, just not even using battle tactics.
Yeah.
Maybe
even
one.
Battle traits?
No battle traits. Just this war scrolls. Maybe you could do 1 euphoric killer if just depending on how things are going. Man, that ability is so good for your opponent.
Yeah. Do you have to pick your 4 killers? You
can pick up to 3, so you could pick 0.
I would just not pick you 4 killers.
Yeah,
it's It's an okay buff for you and an astounding buff for your opponent.
That's the thing. I think it's probably a little better than okay. It's a good buff. It's good.
Run, shoot, and charge.
So if I can run and charge, and I get exploding sixes on the right unit, that could be very good.
Yeah.
But
if you
giving them the 6 is always amazing.
Yeah.
It's always amazing. So
and they could just block a
yeah, and especially if you're going second, because it says you have to choose at the start of the battle round. So if you're going second, you're giving them the 6s up front
to use on you,
and they get to go and like smash your U4 killers or whatever. So now they're ineffective.
Yeah, actually, that makes the if like Slanesh goes first and attacks with a couple U4s, that makes you want, and you win the roll off. That makes you want to take the double turn, so that you can just smash them.
Yeah, although we know that the double turn means you lose 2 points.
4 points.
That's right, 4 points now.
But so, I still think it would be worth it.
I think that's the one faction that I'm most iffy on. Again, keeping that open mind. We don't know what the war scrolls are going to look like. We don't know what all the artifacts and spells and prayers are going to look like. So there may definitely be ways to increase the benefit from that battle trait.
Yeah.
But knowing what we know just now,
it's awful.
Yikes. That is a big yikes. A big yikes.
Yeah.
And everyone else, there's ones that look a little bit stronger, look a little bit weaker, but they're sort of, all doing the same thing. I'm a little bummed that Nurgle and Tzeentch have very similar abilities. It's like they came up with one ability and they just sort of slapped it on 2 gods.
Did Tzeentch lose Fate Dice?
Tzeentch still has Fate Dice.
Okay, good.
But they have this burning mechanic, and then stuff that's burning can't be healed, but it takes the burning off. And then you deal damage to all burning units. And the disease is the exact same thing. You disease units, and they can't heal, but it takes the disease off. And then each turn, you roll and they get damage. It's the exact, they just call it disease. I was a little bit worried because it was the first 2. I thought after that we were going to have Khorne was like, blood defiled on every unit. And then Slanesh is like, depraved. But luckily the other 2 gods got unique stuff. But yeah, so overall, very optimistic. Really looking forward to the full reveals. Couple of little red flags out there. But overall, I'm excited. I'm looking forward to it. I'm hoping that they come out and they start releasing the indices soon. I would love to see them released this week. Would be great. But before the launch box is really what I would like to see. Final thoughts on Faction Focus?
I think we covered all of the Focusist factions.
All right. This has been another episode of Battle Ready.
Ready.
Thanks so much for watching.